Now, good evening. Welcome to another episode of Imitating. This is season 2, episode 8. I think we were last on a couple of weeks ago. We've got a great guest with us tonight. And as you know, Largo, I ran into Vivienne from episode 1, just in town earlier today. So we've got, we never have a bad guest on this show. And we've got a cracker tonight as well. So, just introducing everybody. Largo, how's your week been, fella? All right?
Can't complain. Nothing, no drama, so that'll do me. How about yours?
Well, a week without drama is pretty good. You know what? I've not been so well this week. I don't know what it is. I can't work out whether it's a healthy lifestyle or a very unhealthy one.
There's a bit of temperature drop.
That's mine. Do you know what there has been? The cold just started.
Yeah.
So it's pretty good. Just having to turn the heating on and all that. I don't like it because it's expensive, isn't it, these days?
Just a bit.
Those green taxes. But anyway, on a brighter note, joining us from the Nottinghamshire Derbyshire border, I'm right, is an author and a nationalist as well, and nationalist many years, and man who's got lots of stories, lots of experience. Simon Tomlin on the Daily Agenda. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Welcome, Daz. I'm all right, thank you, mate. To be perfectly honest
with
you. I had an eventful week. Every week's eventful in my life. But nowhere near as eventful as what it used to be. You know.
No, for sure. So, what you got? Any fun and games? Anything you want to share with us, or anything you can? Or I know you get the odd strange comment on your channel, which I watch.
Oh, yeah.
We both do.
There's a lot of strange comments on the channel, really. I mean, I think one of the funniest ones really was in the last few days. We've got 20, meaning the centre right, Tommy Robinson's lot. We've got 24 million veterans to win a civil war with, and I was like, right, okay,
24 million.
Yeah, that's what he said. 24 million
veterans.
What's the
population of the UK?
Yeah, astonished.
But what's the population of the UK?
Is it 6-7 million?
So almost over a third of the UK is a
the stuff of a dream world, quite frankly.
What?
It really is. It's just the stuff of a dream world, you know. I mean, 24 million is just. I said to him, "Are you sure it's not 2.4 million?" No, 24 million. I was like, right, whatever. This guy's on magic mushrooms, but hey, there you go. And then there was another one. What was it? A Farage group who said, "Well, there's going to be a general election within 6 months. I can guarantee you that for a fact." I was like, right, okay, you can guarantee us that for a fact. So it's a fact before it's happened, is it? Right, okay. Work that one out if you can. And you can guarantee it because obviously he's got the crystal ball, hasn't he, looking into the future. And Farage is going to win a massive landslide. And I'm just sat there thinking, this is just the same old typical wishful thinking, driven by decades of desperation at being robbed, cheated, and above all, voting for the wrong type of people and then complaining about it.
Yeah. Go on, Largo.
I was just going to say, as you know, Darren, recently, not long ago, I visited a friend in Romania, and I found out that Nicolae Ceausescu was removed from office. He was a brutal communist dictator, and he was removed from office in 4 days with 100,000 people got on the street. Now
wasn't he shot? Didn't he get shot, Ceausescu?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. He was executed when the army changed sides to the rebels. Now they had 100,000 people on the street. And they didn't have the internet. They didn't have mobile phones or anything like that. And in 4 days, they got rid of a brutal dictator. Now, you've got this 1 million man march. What have they changed? How many months have they been going at? Nothing has changed.
Do you mean So which one's that?
The 1 million man march or something they called it. They called it. They had a march in where they had flag up.
Is this the one where they're painting the St George's Cross on the pavement and stuff like that?
They had a meeting in London.
Yeah.
14th of September.
Yeah.
Unite the Kingdom. Well, there wasn't 1 million there for a start, although Tommy did at first claim it was 1 million.
But
But
what
the
they
thing with
changed?
is every line of cocaine he takes, he exaggerates.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. Oh, no, sorry.
Well, and I estimated it. I'm not an expert, but I estimated it between 200 and 230,000 people. A friend of mine, he did a calculation using AI based on the sheer volume of people actually in the entire panoramic view of it. And he calculated that if there were 3 million people there, the actual queue, as it were, would have stretched for 48 miles, not 3 miles.
Right. Yeah.
So, you do your own maths from that, can't you?
Absolutely.
It says 150,000.
What if the
Do
do you think
do you know-
Keir
do you know-
lost a wink of sleep over him?
you know, guys, coming on 2 points there. Simon, your point about veterans. To be fair, they didn't specify what they were veterans of. They could be veterans of the old Bolivian marching powder, like Tommy is. You never know.
Yeah.
and in terms of the marches, I was listening to a podcast about the film Alive. The guys in the Andes who were in the helicopter crash and they were they got stuck in the mountains for like 14 weeks or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And it was interesting what the guys did. Yeah, they got stuck. I think they got stuck on the border between like 3 countries. It was Uruguay, Chile, and border, I think. And they were sending search parties out for a few days. They didn't find them, and these guys were trying to wave to the helicopters, and the helicopters went away. And this guy, one of the guys who ended up scaling one part of the Andes, he said, "Good." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because now it's in our hands. We're not appealing to other people for help. We're going to have to go out and do it ourselves." Mm. When you made your point about the internet, I thought about this. Actually, I think the internet in some ways is a hindrance, because I think when you haven't got the internet, you pick your phone up, you ring people up, you speak to people, you organise things like Simon would have done in the 90s, and you actually get off your arse and you do it. I think the internet encourages like a lot of chat, a lot of passive chat. But someone else is actually going to do the heavy lifting. Does that make any sense?
Absolutely.
I remember.
Irrespective of all of these things, there definitely wasn't 3 million. There wasn't 1 million. But I mean, Tommy always massively exaggerates it. I mean, go back to June 2024. He claimed there was 100,000. There was actually about 35,000. I know because a friend of mine was there, and he was head of security once for many years at Nottingham Forest. And so obviously he knows how to estimate a crowd. And he was there. He said 30, 35,000, definitely not 100,000. So, but they always bloat these figures, in accordance with their enormous egos. And when it's fueled by cocaine, then obviously the egomania becomes significantly exaggerated. But in truth, like Largo said, what's it achieved? Well, it's enriched a few people, certainly.
I mean,
politically, nothing. It achieved absolutely zero. As I said,
I mean, do you think Starmer lost a wink of sleep over it?
I think he probably did, in a sense, because I mean, he responded to it, didn't he, by saying we're the enemy, and he had a massive rant about ethno-nationalism. In fact, they all had a massive rant about ethno-nationalism at the Labour conference. But speaking of that, Tommy Robinson is not an ethno-nationalist. He's a million miles away from ethno-nationalism.
He's a Zionist.
He's a Zionist, absolutely. Yeah, he pushes the diversity delusion, quite frankly.
And he's an Irish nationalist.
Logically, he's centre left.
He's an Irish nationalist as well.
Well, that's right. He is an Irish nationalist. He's a Fenian, and he's proud of his Fenian ancestry. And I'm not saying he shouldn't be. I'm simply saying he's not an English nationalist. And he's got an Irish passport and travels around the world on this Irish passport. Even when he gets deported from Colombia, he did so on an Irish passport. So if he's a British patriot and a British nationalist, what's the Irish passport all about?
Yeah.
Tommy got deported from Colombia. There's got to be a joke there somewhere, so.
Oh, right.
That's what the Zionist terminology.
To the UK.
What was he in Colombia for? You've got 3 guesses. Was it coffee? I don't know. Right, but
another PR stunt. Oh, Tommy's been arrested. Poor little Tommy. Throw some more money at him, so he can continue living his luxurious lifestyle, and his children, and his so-called ex-wife, etc. whole grifting scam. In fact, we're working on. I can't mention it for operational reasons, but we're working on a quite a large investigation at this moment in time against Tommy and his organised criminal gang, because frankly, that's all they are. They're an organised criminal gang. Look at their back; they're just criminal.
Yeah, you know, they should be in there. They should be in the UK grifting championship final against the family of Captain Tom Moore.
Or Nick Griffin.
And the semi-final was Nick Griffin and Madeline McCann. The McCanns were in there as well. That was a grift.
Yeah,
I have a question for Simon, if I may.
Go on, Largo.
I don't know if you're aware of this, but Johnny has a friendship with a certain gentleman called Johnny Adair.
Yes, I know of Johnny Adair. Yeah, Tommy and Johnny.
Well, anyway, I don't know if this is true, but this is just from what my dad told me. He was a former soldier and served in the Troubles, and he said a lot of groups of a certain persuasion are funded by sales of narcotics.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was wondering, do you see any similarities between? Has Tommy maybe had a chat with Johnny, in quotation marks, Mad Dog Adair, and found the business model to?
And that would just be speculation. But I mean, I think back to the interview we did with Johnny Adair a couple of years ago, I think it was. And Tommy was, not his usual brash, abrasive, tough guy self. He was very deferential, very meek, mild, like a little mouse, basically. And in truth, it was quite embarrassing for him watching it, I would say. And I have no idea. It would just be speculation. But I mean, all of the paramilitaries were into, criminal, very serious criminal activity. I mean, when the IRA used to use the kneecapping method to punish criminals operating in their area, they were just eliminating the opposition dealers without consent. That's all it was. And, if thieves, etc., burglars, if they weren't paying their tax to PIRA, not even so much to PIRA, really, just the local street hoods, then they could expect, a shellacking or a kneecapping. And, look, the old Northern Ireland situation is pretty dismal, grim.
In the case of this civil war that is scheduled to happen imminently, could you see groups like what is it called? Not the English. What's the English Defence League called now? It's morphed into something else. Could you see them becoming like the UDA or the Provisional IRA or INLA in terms of people, punishment, beatings? We're the police now, that kind of thing.
The problem, possibly, but my experience of dealing with them, and they're very abusive and threatening, and disgusting in many ways. But in truth, they really would have to have a massive ideological and DNA transplant, because I just don't think they've got the balls, quite frankly, to do it. I think probably a very, very microscopic proportion. But in truth, I mean, I've discussed this with a lot of people, and we just take the view that they're cannon fodder for phase one, and they'll be gone very quickly. And,
so you don't see them as a group that could be as historic, it could change history like the Provisional IRA or
never in a million years, because they follow a blowhard, a windbag. Tommy loves the sound of his own voice, nothing more. Well, and grifting and cocaine, of course, etc., and hookers and drinking, and lots of free money. And if you actually look at the video that went public this week, I think it was on YouTube as well. He actually admitted that he was down and out, and he thought it was over. The usual narcissistic grifting routine from Tommy. And then Elon Musk came in and saved him and transformed him and teleported him back to success. and this is Tommy's own words, really. He didn't use teleported. That's my editor's emphasis, as it were. And he basically put everything down to Elon Musk. So we know Elon is funding it behind the scenes. And the funny thing is, the British government, so-called, call it foreign occupation government, because that's what it really is. They do an awful lot of ranting about Tommy and funding, etc., but they don't seem to do anything meaningful about stopping that funding, which could be stopped quite easily.
Yeah.
But funding's a tricky one, though, because the provisional IRA that survived for years off funding from the United States.
Yeah, absolutely. But you see, the thing is, Largo, I think it was last year Starmer announced, it was only a few weeks after they'd come, there's going to be an investigation into Russian funding. And Tommy Robinson and Paul Golding and Nigel Farage were in the headlights.
Yeah.
And I've just not seen any evidence at all that anything has been progressed. In fact, Farage, arguably the biggest con man in British politics, in my opinion, his good chum, Nathan Gill, has just taken a guilty plea to receiving bribes from the Russians. But he's just a straw man to protect Farage, because there are loads of them around here. I mean, I was at the Russian embassy on the 12th of June, 2015, and saw the UKIP solicitor there, Liz Jones, brokering the meetings with Ambassador Yakovenko and Aaron Banks, which took place later in the year. And so, UKIP were just fawning and crawling all over the Russians. It's quite embarrassing being there, because, I mean, I was there to be nominated for a free speech award. Not to do.
I mean, the Russians are not our mates. I don't know. They use Anglo-Saxon like an insult.
Well, yeah, true, but that's mainly now because of the hostilities over, Ukraine. But then, I mean, by that token, the US administration is not our friend either.
No.
Country on the face of this earth, and it's entirely responsible for that war.
It was controlled by Israel.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Trump could literally have ended that war had he the mind to. But I was actually watching the Duran today, Alexander Mercouris, and I don't watch it so much as I used to now because I haven't got the time. But he made it perfectly clear that Trump in Moscow is regarded as there's only Putin that has any faith in Trump left. Everyone else has turned against him. They don't want to continue any form of negotiation with him. They want to press ahead with a military solution and take 6 provinces, not 4, to guarantee Russia's territorial integrity, which is exactly what I think will happen. So Trump, if he had a mind to end that war, he could have done so. Instead, now he's talking about sending Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, deep into Russia. And what's going to happen? Well, I would say Russia will probably respond with Oreshnik, and that really will be the end of it, because Russia's fought this war with one hand behind its back, and without using any nuclear weapons of any description, they could literally flatten Ukraine. And the Oreshnik is now deployed, and all they have to do is use it, not just on one area. They could use it on a dozen cities at one time, and Zelensky was begging for a truce this week.
It's also true that Russia's been relying very heavily on troops it has brought in and from the Middle East, from Africa, from Iran.
I wouldn't say
North Korea. I mean, it is largely an army made up of foreigners.
Well, I wouldn't say heavily at all, Olga. I mean, I don't think there is any evidence at all to substantiate a heavy reliance on foreign troops. There's certainly volunteers there and some mercenaries, etc., and some North Koreans most definitely did. The 10,000 that Zelensky claimed, possible, I don't know. I've just not seen any evidence to substantiate it. But I remember
I'm not a fan of Zelensky, but I would rather Ukraine come out of this in one piece than Russia.
Never going to happen.
I'm not a fan of Zelensky at all, but I see Ukraine as a European nation, and I see Russia as an invading Eurasian force. Maybe
Russia is Eurasian by virtue of the fact of where it's situated. It's this vast land that spans Europe and Asia. But the actual power base of Russia itself in Moscow and St. Petersburg is European, not Asian.
Mm-hmm.
Putin, not Eurasian. He's described as a Eurasian nationalist, which is odd because he's actually a Russian nationalist. And now the church, to replace the opium of communism, and they dropped the idea of reinstating the Romanovs. Maybe they'll resurrect that at some stage. But I think Putin really, from what I can gather, is in the last chance saloon with everybody who's backing him in terms of, you've got to break off contact with Trump and let's finish this militarily. And so what will happen, in my opinion, I can't guarantee it you. I don't have a crystal ball. But let's say I'm Vladimir Putin, sat in Moscow, and I want to guarantee the territorial integrity of my nation against the West, against NATO. Then that means everything east of the Dnieper has to be taken. And that includes Odessa to stop NATO from getting a seaport. So, in essence, if Trump wants to play silly buggers, which is exactly what he's doing, that's what will happen. And Ukraine will probably end up with 2 million dead at the end of it.
Oh, yeah.
And Russia, who knows how many will be lost. There's certainly not the extent to which the ridiculous West is claiming, because, in terms of fire support and fire superiority, particularly in artillery, the Russians at one time were taking out 8 Ukrainians to every one they lost, simply because they outnumbered them 8-1 in artillery. And if you're an infantryman on the battlefield and the enemy is lobbing 8 rounds at you for every one you lob back at them, death comes quite quickly, or when all that shrapnel's flying around. And you've got to, I think, a best scenario is Bakhmut. So I actually told the Russians years ago when I was cooperating with them that when it came to war, because I always said to them, there will be war. You will be at war with Ukraine eventually. You can play along with the Minsk Accords all you want to, but you will go to war with them. Absolutely no doubt about it. And when that happens, the nationalist regiments will fight 10 times harder than the conscripts and the other volunteers because of ideology. So look what happened to the Svoboda regiment outside Bakhmut. They manned the trenches and they were almost annihilated in those trenches, primarily by Russian artillery fire, and repeated infantry attacks. The point I'm making is they did fight fanatically. They sustained massive losses, both fatalities and wounded. But the Russians took the trenches. They pierced the center of Bakhmut, and the rest is history. And obviously, there were massive losses there. I mean, the Ukrainians rotated 36 brigades through Bakhmut in a battle which need never have taken place. They should have withdrawn back to Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. But Zelensky has this same attitude as Hitler, not 1 inch back, which means troops on the ground are going to get annihilated. And that's what Russia's doing. It's doing this slow war of attrition.
There's no winners in this one. There's no winners.
It's madness. I mean, look, some guy said to me today, a slaughter of white Europeans. That's what it was always designed to be.
Yeah.
That's what it was always designed to be. I remember talking to Mikkel Skill, the Swedish sniper in the Azov battalion, as it was then. And I used to correspond with him practically every day and night at one time when he wasn't killing people, obviously, or in between killing people, and as a sniper. And I said to him, eventually, he said, we're not afraid of war with Russia. I said, okay, you're not afraid of war with Russia. I said, but the thing is, when they bring their full force to bear against you, they will absolutely crush you. And all of this big talk now about you're not afraid of Russia is going to change rapidly when you're begging the Americans and the British and the whole of Europe for reinforcements and artillery shells and ammunitions. And Mikkel, fortunately for him, saw the light, as it were, and he pulled out. I think it was about 4 years before the Russians officially went in. But it's a disaster. I mean, I remember being in Barcelona and thinking, I think it's almost guaranteed now that there's going to be a war at some time in the future. And it was just very sad and tragic to me. And I just thought, there's going to be a major loss of life, and probably the whole of Europe will burn with it again. Why is it these people just can't learn? But it's not in my power, is it, Largo, to deliver?
No.
All your dads, and we're just, as much as we like to talk and we have opinions, etc., we don't have that power. We don't have our hands on the power to change it. I wish I did, truthfully, because I would try my utmost to bring it to an end. Because the loss of life.
I'm not anti-Russian, but I am anti-Putin. That's the way I put it. I don't like anybody who kisses the Wailing Wall.
Well, yeah, I mean, I understand that entirely. I mean, lots of nationalists have said that here. But I mean, one of the main reasons why people say, why did you, cooperate with the FSB, the Russian Federal Security Service? Well, by that, they mean Sergei Nalobin. Now, he was outed earlier this year, I think it was in January and February, as the Russian master spy in London. Well, I don't believe he was. I always believed it was Alexander Kramarenko, because of the way in which people reacted around Kramarenko. But nobody reacted like that around Sergei Nalobin, and very few people reacted like that around the ambassador himself. But Kramarenko had absolutely enormous power. It was like Darth Vader had walked into the room. This man just injected fear into everyone around him. Not me, but I mean, I had the utmost respect for him. But the thing is, why did I cooperate with them? Well, because look into the looking glass, as it were. We don't need to go down the rabbit hole. There's no magic mushrooms involved. This is just pragmatic consideration. So the Ukrainians want a war with Russia. They're not going to be able to fight it, which means they're going to be calling for tens of thousands of volunteers from all over Europe for their international brigade. And who's going to be wasted? It will be European nationalists, whipped up into a frenzy, eating the good old Russian bear. This is a replay between National Socialism and communism. And so, therefore, that was probably the main reason why I actually did what I did and put my own life on the line, because otherwise tens of thousands of European nationalists would have been slaughtered. They would have been conned. And I helped to stop that. And so people say you aided and abetted the Russian Federation to do that, and you deprived Ukraine of those volunteers. Good. They're alive, aren't they? And they're campaigning against the globalists in Europe instead of being dead and rotting on the battlefields of southeast Ukraine. I consider that a win.
Yeah.
That's cool. I thought sometimes it's good to let people talk. It's good stuff. I mean, I'm just saying. We've talked quite a few. I'm not necessarily a nationalist, but I'm certainly somebody who call a nationalist, a strong patriot. Yeah. And I think that the new patriotic position, I think, going forward has got to be, if you can stay out of foreign stuff, stay out of it. Yeah. Or if you can push for, or if you're gonna have any influence, push for it to stop. Yeah. I mean, but don't forget. Yeah. I mean, this is that thing of. This is why I get annoyed at the people who take the Middle East far more seriously than they take anything that goes on in Britain. The obsession of people on both sides of that.
But when the enemy here is the same enemy as the enemy in the Middle East,
that's right.
Because you got to understand their tentacles are long.
Yeah,
I get that. I get that, but I think there are no good guys in this one on either side, and we've got a problem on both sides. So you've got
one isn't doing us any harm, and one is.
Hang on.
People are not doing us any harm.
Well, let me come back on that. You're right about the unhealthy Israeli influence in Anglo-American politics. I think that's a given. We all know about that, and the way they've been compromising members of parliament, public officials for as long as I can. The whole thing about Mossad and they'll sort you out with the temptation. They'll sort you out with the temptation, and they'll send you the video 2 weeks later. Yeah. That one. But you've also now got a kind of an unhealthy Islamic influence in Parliament as well. You've got these people who are getting into British Parliament strictly on the Palestine issue. Strictly told, you've got your right, and you've got this block of people, and you've got MPs now winning parliamentary seats strictly on the Palestine issue, and that's all they ever talk about. They're not interested in Britain.
To the Israel lobby. They're not in government. They just hold a few seats in relatively insignificant places.
Yeah. So, but look, in terms of what Simon was saying, we don't have the power. So in the Middle East, we definitely don't have the power. Britain likes to kid itself that it's still like an A-League nation. The UK is not an A-League nation anymore in terms of its influence in the world, and we're not going to do anything to make this better or put it right. We've just got to hope and pray that the people of the Middle East get sick of this and start electing peaceful people and not warlords on both sides. That's my view of it.
But don't you think the elected government of the Palestinian Authority has a duty of care to its electorate? Don't you think that to defend its constituents from the Israeli military?
Well, but then you can turn that question around and ask the same question. This is a chicken and egg situation, isn't it? What you need is people on both sides of the fence here. You need some sort of...
One side is a colonizer from nowhere.
No. But
one side isn't. One side is a people of that soil, and one side is a people from nowhere, everywhere, you name it.
Well, look, you had somebody like Rabin in the 90s who did seem ostensibly to be up for some sort of peaceful resolution when he was the leader of Israel.
No, there is no two-state, because one side is people of that land. That is their soil. That is their people. They are entitled to live there. The other side is people from everywhere and nowhere. People from the back streets of the cities of Europe and Russia and America. That's what we're looking at.
This exchange now between Largo and Daz puts it into perfect perspective, really, of what's happening in Britain. See, you've got one faction totally anti-Israeli and another faction totally in favor of Palestine. And where's the battle for Britain in all of this? I'm not talking about you.
My opinion is foreign, including Israeli, including American, including any other religious persuasion. I want no religion in politics.
Yeah, true.
All of that should be out. Yeah, all Chinese, Russian, American, foreign money, foreign influence, out.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree with you.
But I think as well that this stuff there's people on both sides of the fence in Britain who are this is eating up a hell of a lot of bandwidth that can be put into energizing people thinking about what's going on in this country. Why don't they care as much about whether it's
because what the Israelis are doing in Palestine is what they would do to you if they could. They're not your mates. They're not your mates.
I'm not saying they are. But where's the same kind of passion about whether it's homelessness in this country or the state of public services or social provision or whatever it is that people get passionate about. Why not go campaign on that?
I have been passionate. I spent 17 hours in A&E last summer with a neighbour when a neighbour fell over.
I know that, but
that was just a neighbour, and I voluntarily spent 17 hours with that elderly neighbour in A&E.
Yeah, but there are so many people.
I would argue that was a patriotic act.
Well, maybe. I mean, there are so many people in this country that are spending far more time getting wound up about stuff that's happening thousands of miles away that they can't influence in any way whatsoever. And I said, why don't you do something good where you live? Something you can make a difference on your own doorstep. Why don't you do that? Well, Simon, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I don't know, Daz. I mean, ultimately, I think we're all aware of the fact that there is no very simple solution to the Palestine-Israeli conflict. But it's not just that, is it? It's not just Palestine and Israel. It's the wider ambit across the entire Middle East and how the ramifications of mass immigration cause so much harm to Europe. And this is the thing I always say to Tommy and his how could I put it, his adoring supporters, to put it politely, is that you're totally in favor. Don't mean you. I'm talking about them. They're totally in favor of Zionism and Israel. But Netanyahu said recently again, we can send 2 to 3 million Palestinians to Europe, no problem. We don't want them. We can't cope with them. We can't integrate them, and they will not integrate. That will just
I would argue that we can't cope with people from Hong Kong either. Who I have an Irish friend, and he told me that they expected a whole new city being built for them in the middle of Ireland. I mean,
going back to the actual resolution issue itself. Sorry, my lights just died.
No worries. You go. Kind of 9 o'clock shadow there, sir.
In terms of a resolution, I think the best resolution for us, in truth, is I think Nick Buckley, the former Manchester police officer, he actually said on X yesterday, he said, I'm just really sick and tired of seeing foreign flags of every description being flown on the streets of Britain. And he posted a picture of Tommy's UTK and hundreds of Israeli flags. And I was like, it's just the same as the Palestinian flag. This should not be being fought out on the streets of Britain, but it is. And it's also being used as a catalyst for what Largo actually said earlier about this so-called imminent civil war. Do you understand what I'm saying? And it's the same sort of thing. I think a lot of people are on that, to be honest, talking directly to Largo in terms of the question you asked earlier. I think a lot of people in the Tommy side are just waiting for something like another Southport so they can really go to town on things. But, they're so badly prepared and poorly organised and deluded to the extent they think they've got 24 million veterans who are just going to come out of the shadows and rescue them. I mean, I would suggest that all of them read the new book by Anonymous, Civil War UK. Could Britain survive beyond 2029, which I reviewed, I think it was last week, Daz. And it's one of the most shocking pieces of fiction, so-called, I've ever read. And in truth, could it happen that way? Most definitely.
Hang on, I'm just you review a few books. Was this the one with the organisation initials HNH? Or was this a different book?
Oh, I did that a couple of days after. This one is actually...
I'm aware of this book that Simon's talking about, I watched his video on it. And
let me rewatch your videos in sequence and I'll pick it up. Yeah, I mean...
I suspect that it was written by a member of Special Branch or MI5 to nudge people in a certain direction.
It could well be, Largo. I mean, a friend of mine said, oh, it's AI. I said, it's not AI. I said, there's far too many spelling mistakes in the book, and that type of proofreading is eliminated with AI, which is the whole purpose of AI.
Well, you'd think AI would have good spelling and grammar.
Well, you would if you use Grammarly. I mean, I don't use that either. But if you actually look at, a demonstration of Grammarly, which is effectively AI, it eliminates all of the grammatical errors, hence Grammarly, and spelling mistakes, according to whether you're using British English or American English, etc. And so it's littered with spelling mistakes. Truly, it is. I mean, I picked up on all of them. But this is a great thing about proofreading. Try proofreading your own books, and you'll miss these spelling mistakes and punctuation.
Proofreading's a nightmare.
Oh, it's a horrible job. I mean, I've been paid to do it. It's awful.
I'd like to do some news, by the way. I've got some good news. I like how you like this particular thing. Half-time in Belfast, Northern Ireland 1, Slovakia 0.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I'm just working. I got the goal.
I got a few questions for Simon, but I think I've spoken to him too much.
No, it's okay. Come back to that. I'm just going to ask you about reform. You mentioned about Nigel D. It reminds me of one of those dodgy evangelical preachers. That's right. It's like it goes. You remember the film Leap of Faith with a con man Yeah, with the con man preacher, and it's just, I just like, when he comes on, there's all the show, isn't it? When he does one of their conferences, and it's like, it's like going to one of those dodgy evangelical sermons. They pass the collection plate round. I cannot believe for the life of me that people, are these the same people who fall for the Nigerian lottery scam and stuff like that? I can't believe there are people who haven't seen through it. And what do you think of the phenomenon of this guy?
Well, to be honest with you, Daz, Rupert Lowe actually said a couple of weeks ago, I think it was on the Andrew Gold show, that he did actually describe Nigel as a messiah at one stage. And I just sat back and I thought, well, now you've had a taste of what the Monty Python Messiah is all about. He's a grandiose narcissist, just like Trump. And he lives in this grotesque dream world, in my opinion, whereby he's responsible for everything. I did that. I did that. I did this. I did that. Anybody who dares to say I didn't is this, that, and everything else under the sun, because I say they are, and my groupies will just accept it because I'm the divine descended Messiah. Look, at the end of the day, I call him a Monty Python Messiah, in a mocking context, because if he is a Messiah, he's from Monty Python, quite frankly. And how anybody has not seen through him is astonishing. I mean, he started off as a metals trader, second-rate metals trader, Tory, Freemason as well, which is always a massive red flag, isn't it? Freemasonry.
Absolutely.
It is, absolutely. In fact, I remember a woman, I can't remember her name, she was blonde, and she lived in Kent. I'm going back many years ago now. And she actually sent me a message. I think it was on Facebook Messenger. And she said, and this was, way before Farage actually became, so pumped and bloated by RT News, because it was actually RT News more than anything else, and News International, that transformed Nigel into this plasticine messiah, the pleb. And she said, I've got the police at the door, they want to section me. I said, what for? And she says, I've exposed Nigel Farage as a Freemason at the West Kent Lodge. And I was like, what the fuck is happening here? I mean, to me, it was just like bizarre. And I was like, I didn't know what to make of it. But I remember, and she refused to open the door and they didn't take her away. And she got lawyered up, etc. And she got them off her case. And she was the very first person to talk about Farage, being a West Kent Freemason. And so really, with Farage, he's establishment to the core. Always has been, always will be. His offshore bank accounts. I mean, this is the man who wants to reform Britain, and he can't even reform his own banking and taxation practice. I mean, but you can't talk sense to group it of any description who are totally and utterly lost in the worship of an idol figure, because all they want to do is worship their idol. It's like Lucy Brown, who once worked for Tommy. I was talking with her recently after a great book.
Yeah, I remember. Was she the blonde?
Yeah, she wrote a great book called Hate Club.
Did she have a fallout?
Yeah, they had a massive fallout. I reviewed her book recently, and she said, all they want to do is worship their idol. And it's the same thing with Farage. It's like you've got a massive ego battle going on in essence, because Tommy's also a grandiose narcissist, and he also has grotesque delusions of grandeur. I did this, I did that, I did the other. It's like the grooming gangs thing. I mean, all he's done with the grooming gangs issue, quite frankly, is hoover up all the glory for what everyone else has done. Where was Tommy in the summer of 1991 when the BNP went to Halifax and experienced a day of absolute horror, in my opinion, because I was there, on the very first campaign against grooming gangs? Well, Tommy was at school. Marlene Guest in Rotherham, she did more than anyone else. And then Syria Champion, credit to her, jumped on the bandwagon as well. But they always say, no, it was Sarah Champion who did it, and then Marlene Guest did it. It's rubbish, absolute rubbish. Marlene Guest had to quit the Liberal Democrats and join the BNP to get anything done about the grooming gangs. And it's the same thing with Farage. So who created the impetus for what became known as Brexit? Was that UKIP and Nigel Farage? Well, no, it wasn't. I mean, because the trade unions, there were Labour MPs committed to pulling out of the EEC, later the EU. And then also you've got some Tory factions. And then you've got the referendum party under James Goldsmith. who really propelled the issue to significance.
97 election.
Yeah, more than anyone else. And in 2009, when the BNP got 1 million votes, they were domestically ahead of UKIP in every capacity. But just this week, Farage said, oh, well, I stopped the BNP in 2006 and 2008. Well, they got 1 million votes a year after that period. So how could you have stopped them?
Yeah, Nick Griffin was actually our MEP, wasn't he, Darren?
Yeah, but I was going to say that, to be honest with you, Nick Griffin did to the BNP what Graham Souness did to Liverpool Football Club in the 90s. If that was an inside job. If I've ever seen one. Farage, you're right about Farage. The other thing, like what we were talking about this at the time, was in Clacton, and this was when Ben Habib was around in Reform as well. They were saying that they were on course to winning Clacton anyway. Well, under the original candidate.
Yeah, they muscled some guy out the way.
Yeah. They were in the polls in Clacton. They were winning. They were already going to win, and that's why Farage jumped back in. He saw there was a chance to get a seat. Yeah. And actually, it was other people on the ground in Clacton who put all that hard work in, and he just gatecrashed the thing and said me, which is the narcissism thing. You're absolutely right. And so, I don't know that name, Lucy. Was she the woman who was she the woman who was on the documentary where the journalist tried to get her pissed? That's the same woman. So yes, that's the same woman.
Yeah, she was the one of the engine drivers behind it, in actual fact, and she covered it quite well in her book. And I'd advise people to buy the book. Read it in truth, and it putting across her side of things. And Tommy, of course, has smeared her remorselessly, which is what Tommy does. And then
I think she's died, hasn't she, Marlene Guest?
Yeah, Marlene has been dead for a number of years. I think it was 2015, sadly. But if Marlene was still alive, she'd have a very different story to tell. But Lucy Brown, she's got a young baby, Wolfgang, I think he's called, and she's out of that now. And but she's done a very brave thing by coming forward to give her side of the fence. And she also told me, I said, is it true that Tommy laid out a swastika on the table from cocaine in front of Lauren Southern? He said, she said it is true. He did.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
She seemed like a nice lady, that Lucy.
Yeah, she just
caught up in something. Yeah.
Yeah.
People do. I think you mentioned books, Simon. So just to promote your work as well, because I'll send you a copy of this tomorrow. You put it on YouTube or whatever. But you're on the dailyagenda.co.uk. So you've got that's your YouTube channel. You've also got a website. Is that right? And is that pushing the remigration angle as well? Is that the same thing?
Primarily because some people said, shouldn't you just have a remigration website? I said, I said, just look at how long Remigration Action is as a website name, and people don't like typing. I don't like typing anymore, to say the truth. I've had that many years of typing through writing books, and my eyesight at close ranges suffered because of it very badly. So I'll just keep the Daily Agenda and platform the remigration campaign on there, and through the YouTube channel. I've tried to reach out to as many nationalists and also centre-right, because there are a lot of centre-right people who have now realised they were never centre-right to begin with. They were always nationalists. They just needed to hear the call that resonated with them.
I saw you had an interesting conversation with a young man living in Thailand who was very close.
Oh, Goddard. James Goddard, yeah.
Yeah, he seemed like a lovely fellow.
Well, you know what? Yeah, go on,
No, James, that was the first time I've ever really spoken to him, and I can understand the reason why he's gone off to Thailand, because of the extent of the harassment here, not just from the Tommy Tards, basically. They always do that. Yeah, the police, yeah, absolutely. And I did say to him, in private and also in public, don't come back here because of your little boy. Think of your little boy, and he's a cute little kid, and you'll have nothing but trouble. And what happens if you come back here and then you get lifted for political activism. Who's going to look after the boy?
Yeah.
The state,
Social services.
yeah. Well,
Yeah, I mean, we've just had the Prime Minister declare war on basically half the British public, you know, at the Labour Party conference, haven't we? There is a war coming, and there's going to be a big thing about political activism and protest, and you can see they're going to turn the screw big time, I think.
I think, Daz, to be honest with you, this is the depressing thing about it. I mean, I tend not to let much depress me these days. I mean, I suffered from depression many years ago with PTSD, so I know what depression is, and you know, I'm going back, you know, well over 20 odd years ago, and so therefore, I don't allow depressive thinking to set in. But strategically, that declaration of war by Starmer, which is exactly what it was, let's make no bounds about it, it was a declaration of war against you, me, Largo, and everyone like us, quite frankly. That in itself should be enough to unite centre-right people and nationalists, but no, the centre-right just carry on with the divisive tactics and smear campaigns.
That's a fascinating point.
Attack us.
Yeah. Well, you're right, Simon. We have talked about this, haven't we? Because I would say I would call myself real centre right, right?
Oh, yeah.
Which is actually closer to nationalism than fake centre right. Yeah,
well, it is.
It is the fake. Because what happened to centre right many years ago was we went through the new Labour years, and this was the start of mass immigration. But the other thing was they hijacked the lexicon of the conversation of what you were allowed to say in the open window. And all of a sudden, to be against mass immigration, you were racist, or you must be some nasty sort of, you know, swivel-eyed racist with swastika tattoos on your arms or whatever. And some of us, there's just a few of us we're not quite nationalists, but you know, we've never fallen for that bullshit either. Yeah, you know, that thing of we've got to play the left at their own game. No. This is gaslighting. This is gaslighting. This is it's emotional blackmail, and I'm not falling for it. And I think there's plenty of people like me out there who I think you can tap into. You're right. Some sort of alliance between sensible nationalism and what I call the real centre right is necessary now.
Well, I totally agree with you, Dan. It's those who. I mean, I know a lot of people are confused by it, but you know, this is the whole point of changing the Overton window, isn't it? The perception. So this is why I keep saying to people. I know it gets a bit repetitive, even for me doing it. You know, I get like a repetitive strain injury talking about it.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's new subscribers coming onto the channel all the time, so I talk about it frequently. So ideologically, the centre right is actually the centre left mostly. Then there are people on the centre right like you who are actually centre right and very close to nationalism. There's not an awful lot of difference. It's only whisker issues, quite frankly. But with the centre left flag groups, really, that's what they are, like Reform, Advance UK, and I'd even put Restore Britain as a centre left flag group because they're all flaggists, quite frankly, or flag checkers, for want of a better description. See, they've just they had Harrison Pitt, the Lotus Eaters, yesterday, announcing their great policy of deportation, and so this morning it's condensed down into 1.2 million. I thought, well, that's nice and cutesy, isn't it? Because that's now double the figure of what Farage said, 600,000. But previously, Farage said, we're not deporting anyone. There's not going to be any mass deportation. It's politically and physically impossible. And so now, Restore Britain, which is not a political party, and which we're led to believe has no intention of becoming a political party, has come up, hey presto, with this magic solution of how to deport 1.2 million people. But what all of them agree with is they're not going to touch the Boris wave or the Blair waves because they've actually told me those people are British. Are they? They're British.
Well, this is, if the Boris wave didn't open your eyes, and nothing will. You know, I used to be quite relaxed about immigration. You know, it was like 100,000 a year. Nobody signed up for 1 million a year, did they?
I think that's I mean, you're not going to like the answer, but I think that's because you were relaxed about it because it was mostly, until the Boris wave, European immigration.
That will have something to do with it. I'm running
I think we're all a lot more comfortable with, say, people from, I don't know, Lithuania, Poland, France, Italy, than the Boris wave.
I don't know. On my travels, as for the reasons I described to you, behind the scenes before we went live, I've actually met scores and scores of EU citizens, and from all over Europe. And I would say I'm not being anti-European, but people can think whatever they want. I don't care. I speak freely and fairly, in my opinion, based on the experience I had. The vast majority of them were anti-British, anti-English, and they don't want to be here. They used to tell me, "Do you really think we want to be here?" I said, "No, I don't think you do want to be here, and we don't want you here either, because you're the sole cause of the low-paid wages racket. It's the Remain employers who were just milking them." And I've encountered loads of Spaniards in London who were actually working in fast food joints, for want of a better description, for £5 an hour and living 12 to 15 people in a terraced house. And they've given up beautiful homes back home in Spain. I remember meeting this kid in Earl's Court, it was, and not long after the EU rep, just a few weeks after. And I said to him, "Why have you come over here now, after we voted to leave the EU?" "Oh, well," he said, we know in Spain that, we've got to beat the Brexit ban." I said, "The Brexit ban?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Because we won't be allowed to come here." I said, "Well, that's not true at all." I said, "It's all about reducing the numbers." I said, "Whatever you've been told, it certainly isn't true." I said, "There's no plan to mass deport all of these EU citizens." But I said to him, "What's the problem with Valencia?" He said, "Well, there's no work. There's no work at all."
What year was this? 2016?
2016. It was October 2016. So 9 years ago, pretty much exactly. And
because I live in Spain.
Yeah, I know you do. Yeah, and he was saying basically how bad things were. I think youth unemployment at that time, which he fell
Very
into,
high.
was 48%. And I said to him, eventually, I said, things are going to become, uncomfortable here, and you might regret your decision coming here. But he moved out of that place we were staying at Earl's Court, and he was actually working for £5 an hour, food behind the scenes, not front of house, and living in a terraced house with about 15 other people, not far away in Earl's Court. And I was like, why? I mean, why would anyone do this? But that's the animus of the EU, the great EU success story, isn't it? So cool.
That
Britain.
I mean, I can only talk about Spain. The EU is getting less popular as the years go on.
Oh, absolutely, and quite rightly so.
Here in Spain, I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, well, I'm glad, Largo, because there's one thing I found.
Probably going to form a government within the next few years.
Yeah, one thing I found in Barcelona is I remember one evening I was out. I don't know all the districts of Barcelona, so please forgive my ignorance.
No, that's fine. Neither do I.
For 4 weeks, but I went for a wander. So I started off on Cara de Valencia, and I just kept going and going towards the right. And so to my right, you could actually see the mountain that overlooks Barcelona. And that tells you what weather's coming into Barcelona, which is a great place to be, but you know whether you're going to get rained on. Because it does rain a lot in Barcelona when it gets to September. Awful lot of rain, and it comes down in huge torrents. But I was actually talking to a Romanian waitress, and she was lovely in actual. Did you know she was the only person I met on that escapade, for want of a better description, which you mentioned before we went on air, Largo, why I was there? And you might think, crikey, why on earth would you share that type of information with anyone? And she told me, in truth, how badly she was treated by the Catalans in Barcelona, and how arrogant they were. And very arrogant. But I actually, to be honest with you, I actually got on quite well with most of the Catalans, people in Barcelona.
Catalans are not popular in the rest of Spain.
Yeah, I know they're not. And it is the arrogance issue as well. I know. I've been told.
Yeah.
I knew in London, I was in McDonald's one morning getting a coffee, and there was a megabus coach driver there, who used to do the Barcelona run that I went on from London to Barcelona via Paris and Perpignan. And he said, "Oh, in 8 them." I was like, "Really? That's strong." He's like, "Yeah." He said, "Try dealing with them." He said, "Administratively on the ground when you're in Barcelona." He said, "When I used to take my coach in there," he says, "they're an absolute nightmare." He says, "They're so rude and so arrogant." He said, "That's why I developed this view." And he wasn't driving for Megabus at that time. He'd switched over to National Express. But I don't know. I mean, my experience of I will always have, despite it being a disaster, in truth, for me, the overall objective was to get to Moscow. So, in truth, it was a disaster because the Russians pulled the plug for whatever reasons they care to explain or to invent, whatever. That's simply what happened. But I will always have very fond memories of Barcelona itself, and because when your life is on the line, you tend to become very intimate with the environment that you're in.
Did you go to Casa de Gaudi?
Crikey.
Do
you know what?
Gaudi.
Yeah, I probably, it's off. Remind me of the street.
Oof, I just say Gaudi. He's the famous Catalan architect.
That's right, he is, yeah. But it's not that place that you're talking about. It's not far from Plaza de Catalunya.
It could.
You
I
actually
haven't
come
been
out
to
the north
Barcelona
end.
for a while.
I think it's the north end of Plaza de Catalunya, and then you walk up. I mean, I don't know the names of the streets, etc. Largo, because I'm not Catalan, and but it has been a while, yeah. But I remember actually, I took loads of photos of this. But when I was in Holland, and I had messages clarifying the situation from Moscow and also from London, I thought this device is going to have to get wiped and sold, and I'm going back through the channel with a 2G phone. So even the covert, the covert recording I made of the Russian consul in Madrid denying me asylum, I recorded that on Red Phone, and I deleted that as well, which was devastating for me because I wanted to keep it, but I thought there's just nowhere I can upload this to in the cloud, as it were, because it will be used in evidence against me. It's got to go. I've got to go through the channel when I'm arrested. Blighty side, I've got to be.
Only totally emailed them to somebody.
Yeah.
Well, you know what, dude? They get that. They get that easily enough. With the echelon dictionaries. The echelon dictionary. Yeah, the echelon dictionaries, even before they had optic nerve, which Edward Snowden told us about, they would have picked that up. And the only way I really could have done it was to leave it in an account with an alphanumeric email address and just leave it as a draft and never send it. But even that, echelon would pick that up as well. So it just had to go. And so I lost all my photos as well, apart from one photo, which I actually posted on Facebook of me stood in front of a bin, of all things, with Barcelona Municipal Council of Barcelona.
Barcelona.
Speaking of photos, I'll tell you why I saw in the week that made me laugh. It's bad taste life at that. It was at one of these stupid marches, and it was a guy, and he had the Israeli flag in front of him on a rail, and he was giving the Nazi salute in front of it.
Right.
Yeah, I just feel like, well, does he not get it? It's one of those I'm not quite sure where to start moments. It was a bad taste giggle I had at that, but I was like,
that actually reminds me of the Azov battalion, which became a brigade and then a regiment, and a regiment then a brigade, and also the International Brigade. Some very fucking unpleasant people in that International Brigade, believe me, and just real thriller killers. And it reminded me at one time because you got Israeli Zionists fighting for the International Brigade, and also Islamists. And I'm like, it's not a very curious mix. We've got Islamic State in the Azov battalion, and also Zionists.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
correct me if I'm wrong. About 2006, didn't Griffin have a Zionist phase?
No, I don't think. I don't think so.
No, Griffin. What Griffin did was a
pro-Israel phase.
No, he claimed. Well, he claims. I can't speak for him. I don't like Griffin at all, as you know, and he doesn't like me, and that's the way it is. And he claims he was approached by the bankers, the Zionist bankers, and the Chosenites, for want of a better description. And he was told, you can carry on with all of your anti-immigration campaigns, etc. We won't interfere with that in any way, shape, or form. But you've simply got to back Zionism and the state of Israel, and we'll sling loads of money your way. And he claims he turned it down, etc. And so obviously they backed Tommy and fake Farage instead. But I mean, Griffin loves money.
Yeah, that's why I don't believe him.
He's quite wealthy.
No, he wasn't bankrupt. He's been bankrupt twice, hasn't he, Griffin?
Well, he bankrupted the National Front, and he also bankrupted the BNP.
He's got an enormous land. He's got an enormous farmhouse in Wales.
I'm telling you,
he built an extension on that from BNP membership funds.
Cheeky monkey.
Yeah, and he actually claimed, and it causes a lot of outrage even to this day from former BNP members. I mean, I wasn't in the BNP at that time. I'd gone walkabout. And he claimed at the time that it was perfect for holding meetings and seminars for the BNP, and therefore he justified taking all this money from the BNP from donations and membership funds and building this huge extension, which obviously, when he was expelled from the BNP permanently and because of bankruptcy and flat packing, corruption, well, he didn't sell the extension or the farmhouse, did he? Or the land, and reimburse the BNP.
Is it a
small holding?
Just say,
yeah.
Isn't that house in the middle of nowhere in Wales? I was just thinking when he said it. Yeah, when he said it was for BNP meetings, but you're all going to go. You're all going to go to the hills and the valleys in Wales, are you?
Yeah, he's got pigs and chickens and all sorts.
Because there were only sheep around, and he could see everyone that was coming. You know, it's like he certainly saw the BNP membership coming, didn't he? Because he fleeced them good and proper. And look, I mean, in truth, Griffin and his so-called comeback. I was going to say earlier before we got sidetracked, Griffin started off as a Christian, not a Christian nationalist, just a Christian.
CV.
Yeah, he started off nominal Christian. Yeah, CV. And although his father was a very highly placed Freemason, according to sources, and Edgar, and then he became an Odinist, according to him, and with the White Power tribe. And I don't believe any conversion Griffin ever made was sincere or genuine, which a lot of his critics actually said at the time. And then afterwards, he came back in and we're going to do Christian nationalism, you know, because this is going to save us. And he started on the hate preachers routine and whipping it up there against the hate preachers, which was a successful strategy in some ways. And then all of this.
Yeah, but I just said, jump back in a second. Was that when he was involved with that Italian guy, Roberto Fiore?
Yeah, well, he's been involved with Fiore for many years, in actual fact, and through their positions, which I was regarded ridiculous outfit. You know,
was that when the SAS infiltrated C18?
No, that was the SAS counter-revolutionary warfare wing infiltrated C18 long before that. That was specifically because there was they believed there was an organized threat to assassinate Bernie Grant MP, black MP, who said after the Tottenham riots when Keith Blakelock was murdered that the police got a bloody good hiding and deserved it. And so the BNP were, well, I say BNP, they'd morphed into C18 by that time. They were still in the BNP, but they'd morphed into C18, and they were talking about taking out Bernie Grant. But the SAS sergeant in particular, who contacted me years later using the alias Stephen Bagan, that's not his real name. I do know his real name. And I won't mention it, obviously. Well, because at the end of the day, I actually liked Bagan. I mean, it's as simple as that. He did what he did, and he said he regretted it. But whatever the case is, he said they turned out to be a load of bullshit, in his own words, and so he was pulled out. But the SDS weren't pulled out; they were still there, and the SDS were in all right wing and left wing groups and organising the violence and whipping it up. And
Really?
Marching. Yeah, absolutely.
So we're in the left-wing groups, correct?
No, they'll infiltrate us also. So, sorry, I really interrupted you there. So we were saying about, this was with Griffin. Griffin went through his Christian soldier phase in the mid-80s. Was it just after that he started trying to get money out of Colonel Gaddafi? That's why it was making me laugh when he said he turned money down. Nick Griffin never turns money down. He had the betting bowl out in Libya, didn't he?
No, apparently, all I know of it, because I never knew Griffin at the time, and I've never been in the NF, and he went to Libya and came back with 5,000 copies of the Green Book, telling them how to organise a revolution from the Arab perspective, like Gaddafi did. Griffin, in truth, he should never have been allowed anywhere near the BNP membership. The fact he became leader, it was a disaster. I saw it all coming in 2002 and before that, in actual fact. And so I decided to walk because I just couldn't go through it all again. What I went through for 5 years in the BNP, 1990, 1995, which left an awful scars, psychological scars and physical scars. But physical scars are nothing. And the psychological scars were something, and I didn't want to go through it again. I thought, I'm not having any more of this. And I always knew one day I'd come back, and it would be many years into the future, which was exactly what happened. And then we have Griffin. As soon as I'm starting to reactivate the BNP, the old BNP membership, suddenly Griffin's making a comeback. Do you get the point I'm making?
Yeah.
Because he's been tasked. He's been tasked to make a comeback. That's all it is, quite frankly.
Yeah. So but I can't see it getting off the ground. Surely it got he's a man whose time was a long time ago, and he's not going to get anywhere, is he, Simon?
Well, Daz, we had I won't tell you the guy's name, but he was in the Homeland Party. I had a conversation with him a couple of days, probably a week ago now, and we were talking about Griffin and Alex Yerbury. And he said, well, Alex Yerbury, at the end of the day, I'm quite happy for him to just use as a crank magnet to attract all the NS nutters. I said, yeah, that's fine by me. I said, but by the same token, we'll adopt the same strategy against Griffin because he can attract all the Christian fundamentalist nutters. So as far as I'm concerned, all Griffin has become now in the very sad, it's not even the twilight of his career, the 1 minute to midnight phase of his career is a crank magnet. So that's what he's become. It's a great little grift that they've got going over with Jada Franson and Jim Dowson. There's no
the thing. Remember, religious people, they give money to evangelical preachers, so they're quite happy. They're quite a bit of cough on their money, Simon. You know that.
Because they are. They are, Daz. You're absolutely right. But I mean, if you've seen the photos, and I've seen some. Griffin and Dowson in their black Templar capes with the red Templar cross on and their plastic swords, as it were, LARPing as crusaders. I'm just like, how on earth can anyone take this shit seriously? Because
the man had such
nonsense.
By the way,
he ain't well.
By the way, Simon, thanks for your video about Alex Yerbury. That was one of the best laughs I've had for a long time. I went and looked him up. And he's trying to look like Hitler, isn't he? And I said in the comments, he was actually trying to look like Hitler. And I said, actually, he's ended up looking like Ron Marl from Sparks.
You know what? The majority of people on my channel said he actually looked like the guy from Good Night Sweetheart.
Right. I'm just thinking he's going to turn Nick Griffin. He's going to turn Nick Griffin. He's going to say this 10 ain't big enough for both of us. But
yeah. I mean, the thing is, it's like with Yerbury. I mean, he became very abusive about me to Kev Bryan, the former leader of the National Front, and very threatening. And I thought, well, I was going to just continue playing with him, toying with him like a spider on a web. And then when Kev sent me these screen captures of what he'd been saying, I thought, oh, well, no, I'm not prepared to do that anymore. I'm not going to bring him on the channel after a year or so and then wipe the floor with him. It's going to have to be another form of resolution now because he's actually threatened me with violence. I mean, Alex Yearby, I doubt very much he could punch his way out of a wet paper bag, quite frankly. But in closing on that clown, he actually, the funniest thing I've seen, really, apart from the waxwork Hitler stuff with his trench coat on down to the knees, same colour as the flag blessing ceremony he did, and I think it's in an office somewhere. And it looks like a sad far-right variant of The Office with David Brent. And Alex calls him David Brent, and looking like the guy out of Goodnight Sweetheart. And each of his groupies comes up from the regions and presents the flags to him, and he blesses the flag, just like Hitler did at the Nuremberg rallies. And I just sat there thinking, oh my goodness, what the fuck am I watching? This guy thinks he's going to be taken seriously. Like this? It's impossible. So when nationalists say to me, we need to be united, he's not a nationalist, he's an ultra-nationalist, he's a white supremacist, he's a neo-Nazi and an Hitlersim, and I don't want to be united with him because I'm not like that. And that's
you're not that, Simon. No, you're right. And this is the thing I always say about nationalists. This is why I couldn't be a full-blown nationalist, probably, because of the associations with boot boys and neo-Nazis and stuff like that. And your point about Griffin was great because, Griffin talked about cleaning the party up and moving it into sort of borderline moderate ground, so people like me might be able to vote for it hypothetically. But he kept all the scumbags around it. He never had a purge of them, did he? Yeah.
He never got rid of them. Look.
No.
When I went to the Mill Public House, which is like 1.25 miles from here, in that direction beyond me, I think it was January 2000, I walked in, and on the left-hand side where this small bar is, because it was held in the social function room upstairs, not down in the actual pub itself, is a blood and honour stall, selling every form of neo-Nazi memorabilia you can think of. I just walked around and looked at it, and I just thought, oh my goodness, Now, Calvin Richards told me the BNP had changed. Griffin had changed the PNP. It was transforming rapidly. And then I'm told, when I mentioned all of this stuff, oh, well, yeah, you see, the thing is, we couldn't get a meeting venue without the help of Benny Bullman and Blood and Honour, so we can't afford to upset them. And that association just continued, and Griffin was still taking money from Blood and Honour. And Tyndall took money from Blood and Honour. It's a whole myriad of, could I put it, hypocrisy, quite frankly, in my opinion. Because Tyndall used to say to Richard Edmonds and John Morse in their famous arguments, don't want these bloody skinheads on these activities because the press are always photographing them, and then we see photos of them doing, the Roman and wearing their paraphernalia, and it looks bad. And then there's Tyndall taking his cut from Blood and Honour.
So Simon, was this the sort of nationalist music scene and the gigs and stuff like that? That was a process of that, yeah.
I heard, I don't know, because I was never involved with it. I met Ian Stewart a few times, basically, and I told him that it wasn't for me, it was too extreme, too radical. And I actually liked Ian Stewart. He's a very nice guy, I thought. I know that is going to annoy an awful lot of people, me saying that, but I'm not going to disrespect him, not just because he's dead and the nature of how he was killed, simply because I speak from truth, from experience. He was very pleasant to me, very respectful, even though I was young and stupid, as most 22-year-old men are in actual fact.
Yeah.
But he put me in the right direction as I saw it to the BNP. He was the sole reason why I joined the BNP. And I don't blame him for it. I don't blame anybody for
on the arms.
It was just the way it was. I joined the BNP, end of. It's like I'm 57 years old next month. And in total, out of those 57 years, I spent 7 years in the British National Party. So for 50 years of my life, I would never remember the BNP. But the only thing people remember when they talk about me is in the BNP. He spent 7 years in the BNP, but he spent 50 years not in the BNP.
You spent a good chunk. Yeah, you spent a good chunk of those 7 years opposing the whack jobs and the fascists and the boot boys who drag it down and drag it.
I've got the scars all over my face and the head. I mean, see that brown mark there? It's not a birthmark. That was caused by a skinhead's Doc Martin Boo, who kicked me so hard in the forehead it took it almost right down to the skull.
Was that the guy? That was the guy in the pub, wasn't it? The former the guy. I found something about him online, and I'll tell you another thing you mentioned actually the other day, which is interesting. I do have a couple of issues of notes from the borderland at home. So we do have that in we do have that in common as well. Dr. Larry O'Hara, interesting publication for sure.
Larry. I used to work with Larry. I say work with him. I've cooperated with him on a number of projects involving David Shaler and Annie Machon, MI5, Tony Blair, and the mainstream media. And I still speak occasionally over matters of mutual interest. But I mean, all I can say is, however wrong-headed it may seem to other people, naive to others, idealistic to other people, I believe I did what was the best thing to try and modernize the BNP and to get rid of the NS. But believe me, trying to get rid of the NS, the fascists were all wankers anyway. Don't worry about that, I assure you. They were absolutely gutless daydreamers, which is Nick Griffin, and quite frankly. And because he's never really broken out of his fascist third position, quite frankly. But trying to take on the NS and get them out of nationalism is life threatening.
Yeah, for sure.
Really?
They're ultra violent. They'll kick you to death in a gang without a second thought. You name it.
There was that group not long ago that got banned that were called National Action.
Oh, National Action. Yeah, you see now, we had a discussion a couple of days ago with a guy from the Homeland Party. And he was talking about why he left PA and why he left the Homeland Party. Very similar to the reasons I've just explained. And somebody mentioned the White Vanguard. And I said, well, I see the White Vanguard going down exactly the same road as National Action getting banned. And that's my opinion. I can't guarantee it, but I just see them creeping into the same territorial ambit that National Action was involved in. I mean, when I first saw photos of National Action, I just thought, oh my goodness, fellow travelers with Mark Collett. You mentioned Mark Collett.
Well, you know about Mark Collett, Simon. That National Action story was like, it's one of the last things. I'm good conscious of the time. Thanks for being with us tonight. Brilliant. Yeah, but right, I was watching that. I don't watch mainstream news anymore on TV. And one of the last times I did was when they busted that guy. The guy said he was going to kill an MP in a pod or something like that. And and there was that strange-looking dude, Robbie something. Robbie Mullen was that his name. And he joined National Action, and then he discovered they were a little bit violent, and he was horrified. I was like, please, do me a favour. I didn't join the fascist organisation to fight people.
And then he goes, Brown Green Bowling Club, and there was nothing but bowling.
Yeah, that's it. He goes, and it turned out Robbie was secretly feeding information to Hope Not Hate, and I was like, of course he was. Yeah, he wasn't a plant, was he?
This is the funny thing about National Action. So, look, I'm not advocating what they did. I'm completely opposed to the behaviour and the ideology. But that said, like Larry O'Hara at NFB magazine, he did a very truthful and fair and balanced analysis of National Action and the prosecutions against them, and also the prescription order. So that's prescription, not prescription.
PRO prescription.
some people certainly need a prescription, and it should be an antidote for magic mushrooms, both in nationalism and on the centre right, and all the leftist groups as well, because they all have these weird and wonderful ideas about what they're going to do. But I think reality would dictate otherwise. But speaking of national action, yeah, I don't believe the vast majority of them are involved in terrorism in any description. But they were radicals, certainly, but not terrorists. And they were certainly not carrying out acts preparatory to terrorism. Probably 2 or 3 of them were, but not the vast majority of them. But contrast that with Hope Not Hey, who openly admit to carrying illegal firearms, and they've admitted that several times. So the bent coppers, and that's why they are bent, because they have this cherry-picking exercise. Well, we'll turn a blind eye to Hope Not Hey and its illegal firearms, but we'll bust national action instead because we need to balance the books against the Islamist extremists.
You're right, and Hope Not Hey have also put adjunct provocateurs into various organisations across the spectrum, haven't they? You know, this is just these are people who will start trouble, and then they'll tell you who joined in, then they'll tell the police who joined in, and guess what? They're the ones who. This is part of this in your book, The Fanatics, isn't it? And if you want to plug any of your books, then do so. I've got The Fanatics. I think I'm have a good read of that over Christmas. That's one of those where you sit down for a few days and do it in a burst. Yeah.
Well, I think the Fanatics was an incredibly painful experience for me to write. I mean, I suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder many years ago as a result of what happened, and obviously the suicidal depression as well that I had.
Sorry, yeah.
Because phase 2 of PTSD is the suicidal depression, and phase 3, if you get that far, which 30% don't, they kill themselves. Sadly, you get to the resurrection, the restoration phase, where you try to rebuild yourself, and that's what happened. I rebuilt myself. So then going back into writing The Fanatics was an extremely painful experience, trying to recount all of these things in graphic detail whilst maintaining a clinical detachment barrier between myself and what I was writing, which just really wasn't possible. But yeah, I mean, that is where it all began, and that caused a lot of problems, obviously upset loads and loads of people, and I've been upsetting people ever since. And really, the latest book, Patriot Games, about the centre-right organised criminal gang, I'm not talking about you. You know what I'm talking about.
I know, what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. I don't like them, and I don't like them in the centre.
We're not talking about. They're not centre right in the true sense. These are the fake centre right. Yeah. I think one thing that's come out of our conversation is actually, do you know what? I need to stay away from these fake centre right people. Actually, people like yourself and people like myself, and there's lots of us, probably need to talk and realise there's not a world of difference between us. We could be in the same organisation, couldn't we, easily? So that's probably one of the takeaways.
Well, I think that eventually that's what's going to have to happen, because it's like I've tried to explain to people that they have, and I don't think I'm doing it very successfully, contrary to what other people keep saying about. I mean, one guy came on the channel and said, "You're the Messiah who's come to save nationalism." I said, "Let me tell you something right now. I am not a Messiah. I don't believe in the messianic complex, and I have not come here to save nationalism. I've come to reawaken people, to remind them of where they went wrong, if anything. But a Messiah? No, absolutely not. I'm not here to
concept.
Trying to save nationalism, you should listen to some of the conversations I've had with with nationalists from across the spectrum, and the chances of uniting them before there's something like primary balkanization is about 0. And I'm being totally honest with you, because they've all got their own ideas about being big fish in little ponds and being factional, and we'll all come together at the right time. Some people have said, you'll all come together at the right time. Now is the right time. For goodness sake, if you can't see now is the right time, when is the right time? When the whole country just goes bang? That's the right time, isn't it? And you've made no preparations whatsoever for primary balkanization. And so I would say this, as a nationalist, in closing, irrespective of how controversial it may be, upsetting to nationalists, and also to some people in the centre right, is as much as you should make preparations for contesting political campaigns, you should be making equal amount of effort to prepare for primary balkanisation. So primary balkanisation is the point of no return and will be there within 8 years.
Really?
Right. So so this is where you're talking about a cease to all immigration, and as a basic minimum, remigrating as much as the Boris wave as you humanly can. That's
well, no,
that's
no. Primary balkanisation is the point of no return in terms of we're on a collision course with balkanisation and bitter sectarian conflict.
You mean parts of the UK?
Yeah. So
areas or?
So I'm just saying there, Simon. So your proposals about no immigration for no permanent residence for 10 years, I think, and remigrating the Boris waves to start for 10. That's your antidote? That's your last chance to lose, is it? Yeah, that's.
Well, yeah, it is. I mean, I'm a pragmatist. I understand these things can't be done overnight. That's why I've said, it will take at least 20 years to achieve this. It's like on the night of the 24th of June 2016, when everybody was celebrating the so-called victory, the EU ref. I said, look, what are you celebrating? We won. I said, you won what? We won a referendum. Now it's going to take another 15 to 20 years to actually enforce the Brexit process. No chance. And here we are. Look, here we are. It's nearly 9 years on. Could be 10 years next year, and it's actually been reversed, unpicked by thread. And Farage, I wouldn't trust him with the time of day. And I don't trust him on immigration. I don't trust him on any issue in actual fact. And so, therefore, primary balkanisation, if reform gets flat-packed, which is Farage is notorious for flat-packing organisations, making shady deals behind the scenes, it will cause absolute chaos on the right. There will literally be an uprising of some description, which will be lashing out in haste, unprepared, the wrong thing to do. If Farage does get in with a majority, a landslide majority, within 4 years of him being in, that's 8 years from now, there's disaster. Oh man, this man has let us down. Why hasn't he done any of these things? And you're creeping faster and faster. In fact, you're not creeping, you're hurtling towards primary balkanisation in terms of where all the cities have lost. All the cities are lost. It's the major cities that are lost at the minute. But if you look at York, and then the book I was referring to earlier, so-called novel, Civil War UK, there's that chapter, The Siege of York. And look, people say, oh, don't get too carried away. Okay, well, people always say this, and people have said this to me for 30-odd years about the things I've been warning about. But could it happen? Yeah, definitely.
If I was a betting man, Simon, I would actually have money on reform being flat-packed in some capacity at about a year or two out from the election. I think that's what will happen.
Why? Sorry? I agree. I agree with you. What will happen?
It will probably. I was just thinking, it'll either be a civil war within the ranks, or a flat pack, or probably a civil war followed by a flat pack. Thinking about it, and the thing with reform is some good people are joining reform, and some good people are supporting them. They're misguided. They've been sold pop. God knows how they're going to feel if that happens. If reform gets flat packed in 2 or 3 years, you're right. God help us.
Which I don't think anyone's really focusing on this side of the Atlantic. So Trump is trying to ban Antifa and carry out a mass roundup of all of these Antifa activists. They're now publishing basically wanted lists, mugshots of Antifa activists all over the states, in all 50 states. And so look at it this way. Let's say Trump does go ahead with this crackdown, this mass detention, and it has to be indefinite detention on grounds of domestic terrorism. So you're going to have the copycat, the mimics, the minor birds here wanting to do exactly the same thing they did to Charlie Kirk. And so that means Farage, Robinson, and Ben Habib and Rupert Lowe, and probably me as well.
God, right. Why would I want to shoot you, Simon?
Well, people would like to. I mean, there are days when I wish somebody would actually, because it'd be
Oh,
a
bless
great
you.
cure for the severe Crohn's disease that I've got. Because whilst I look reasonably okay on camera, doing piece to camera in the YouTube videos, the pain at times is horrendous because I've got connecting fistulas, you see. And the pain from them is, and I'm always borderline infection. So it means I've got 4 in the drawer behind me. I've got 4 different types of antibiotics, and even those might not be able to prevent sepsis. So then that would mean hospital again, and then they'd have to hit you with what they call domestos, in other words, the Epiode stuff. I've survived sepsis twice, and sepsis does an enormous amount of damage to the body. And
I'm sorry to hear it, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. So sorry.
It is, and I don't whinge about it on camera. I hope I'm not whinging now. Saying that I grit my teeth and soldier on, and every day I try to deliver at least something that makes sense. And in truth, and people will probably won't like it because this session will also go on my own YouTube channel later when I've got the download link. There are days when I don't actually feel like doing anything. But I feel like I'd be letting people down if I didn't do it. Not myself down. I don't feel like I'm letting myself down, but I think, well, I've got to carry on with what I started, basically. And so therefore I just carry on. And that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think, we're both regular followers of your content, son. You know that.
Yes.
And regular commenters as well. And I've learned a lot from you, mate. So keep up with that, please. And we'll, I'm sure we'll do it again. So I've got a bit of job work either tonight or tomorrow morning to get some stuff across to you. And just so you know as well, in case you are interested, the score in Belfast is Northern Ireland 2, Slovakia 0.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Good. There we go. So, a few minutes to go. Let's hope Northern Ireland can hang on to that. Is there anything else? Just thinking, Marco, you're a political activist from England originally who lives in Spain, and there are your similarities with Paul Thorpe End.
Yeah. There was a question I had to ask Simon, but we've not got round to it. But there we go.
No, go on, ask it now, and then we'll play.
Yeah, there was one of your videos I watched, and there was something called the wigwag signal. What?
Yeah,
if you don't mind me asking, without revealing too much, what situation were you in, and who was signalling you?
Well, that's a very good point, because you see, at that time, I've been in contact with Stevie Bagan, and there were a lot of very shady things happening, and I was getting flashed by Gazelle helicopters frequently. I mean, I remember doing the Notts Derby border one morning, and I got flashed by one Gazelle helicopter, and I was really low, just hovering overhead and going round and round. I thought, well, whatever, and then got flashed by another one, and I was like, yeah, and it was a different one. It was painted differently as well, and so they were based nearby at Chilwell 17th Infantry Brigade, and of course I was heavily involved with the Russians as well at that time, behind the scenes, well, overtly and covertly. And so the wigwag signal, it simply means, in terms of the old system of railway warnings, danger of death ahead. Do not proceed.
Yeah.
Right.
So still train signal.
Yeah, it is, but it was adapted by
Simon.
the US military and then incorporated across the whole of NATO for the Cold War scenario. And I just couldn't remember at the time. I knew the signal. I knew the signal itself, which goes like that, 2 torches like this.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember the name of it, but I stood there startled and I was like, what the fuck? It was doing this, and I thought, I need to go quickly. I just ran, jumped over a fence. Yeah, through the undergrowth, did a half moon through this shitty, horrible field, and then came out right at the top end where there's no direct line of sight from those making signals, because it goes around a bend in the canal. It's a place called Alresworth, and Ilkeston and Cotmanate, Derbyshire's on the right-hand side, Alresworth, the Nottinghamshire side. So literally where I was walking was the very dividing line between Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire. And so I got out of it and I went on a long trek and then got a taxi back later on in the night. And then I got back and thought, I've got to research this torch signal, because I couldn't remember what it was called. And, I researched it and came up with that on the internet. I was like, wow, fucking hell, that was it.
You had a guardian angel?
Well, the funny thing is, where they were stood right at the end of that canal, to the left was an extremely dark lane that I was about to walk down. And if anybody's going to for you, it would be there, because it is black as soot. And I always used to be on edge, on tenterhooks, walking down that lane. And because I had loads and loads of death threats, credible death threats as well. So this is why I used to do these things. Because lots of people don't let me out in the dark. And I always used to have a special forces torch with me as well, and also a green laser pointer, and other things. I can't go into that. I don't carry them now, obviously.
No,
I don't really need to, but at that time it was full on, and I just took the view that there's an ambush. There's an ambush down that lane. That's what I thought, and I need to go. This is all split second stuff, bang on, and then I survived to tell the story, as it were, and I went back and reenacted it with a friend of mine who lives just up the street. He was the one actually doing the wigwam signals, and apparently his uncle has been watching the Hunted docu-series on my YouTube channel, and he's now become absolutely obsessed with this Hunted docu-series and can't believe someone like me lives close by. And I'm like, yeah, but the thing is, I live a really boring life.
Yeah.
Incredible.
You do now, but that haunted thing was a great watch. It was a bit of a thing about out with a camp. The thing is, it was in a different time as well, Simon. I think it wouldn't be that difficult for you to. I don't know about maybe the police these days aren't as bright as the police 20 years ago. They don't seem particularly bright now.
Well, it wasn't 20 years ago, that Daz. I mean, that came to an end in 2019. So it's only 6 years ago.
Right, I'm trying to get my timelines wrong then. But yeah, I mean, like in terms of like a how-to in how to evade capture, I thought it was great viewing and compelling, and that kind of it kind of transcended what your politics are or anything like that. So
actually, I had a dream about that, particularly the video where you said there was a sniper on the bridge.
Oh yeah, Bentley Viaduct.
I had a dream about that for some reason.
Yeah,
that was.
I had a nightmare about it. Experiencing it.
Yeah. But I'm just thinking, I'm just conscious of the time. Simon, thanks so much. You've been on for 100 minutes, mate. It's an epic. I need to put my hand in my pocket and pay you extra. Right. Yeah, okay, but I'm a bit scared. It'll have to be Tuesday. But I'm absolutely pleasure. Thank you so much for being on. And yeah, we'll do. I'll go on the daily agenda sometime. We should explore that thing about moderate nationalists and the real centre right now close they are together, really, in terms of that's a really interesting talking point that comes out today. Has anyone else got anything else quickly before I'll just mention one other quick thing. Mention one other quick thing. Northern Ireland have won. They've won 2-0 against Slovakia tonight. So they're now going to play. Yeah, so it's a big one. It's against Germany in Belfast on Sunday. I think that's a winner takes all type game. Yeah. So there's a lot on that game.
Lovely.
Yeah. So yeah, Simon, thank you. Is there anything else? Any books you want to plug or anything like that before you?
No, it's all right, Daz. Thank you very much. I'm just tired of plugging books, to tell you the truth, on my own channel. Well, look, it's been good to appear on here because it's been a welcome break from actually, doing my own channel, piece to camera. Because most of the time when I do those piece to cameras, I'm completely alone. And hyper vigilant as well of my environment because I stand with my back to the countryside.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, because you're out in the open air. It's got its pluses and its minuses, hasn't it? For sure.
It has. I mean, it's beautiful scenery, as everyone said. But occasionally, a couple of nationalists in the local area trot along after I've recorded, and we and have a chat, etc., whilst I'm either uploading or just finished uploading. But there's another bonus as well, is that actual area, what people don't know, this is a secret. See, the internet connection here is not particularly good, in truth. I can't even get 5G, it's crap. And so I've got to literally locate devices in a certain direction, usually facing due south or southwest, to get a decent signal. But up there, you can get 5G 10 times faster than central London. Because there's a 5G map. Probably 600 yards, 700 yards from there. And so, and it's odd because it's only at one particular location at that area where you actually get that speed. But if you move 20 feet away, it's about a third less than that. And then there's another location which is hyper fast. So it's a great place for me to just go and sit and chill out, basically. And
you need that.
Forget everything, because just doing that amount. I mean, what I talk about, I think is like really heavy duty stuff most of the time. And so it's just great because when I've done the video, upload it, make sure it's okay, and just sit and look at the countryside and drink tea and smoke cigarette.
Drinking tea is always a good pastime. It is for sure. Right, quality. Right, I tell you what, we're going to go for 1 hour, 1 3/4 hours. So yeah, we have got some stamina, Simon. I'm going to let you go, mate. I feel like I'm holding you hostage. So
remember the download link, Daz.
I will. I'm gonna find a way of getting this, getting the audio. You don't want the link to my YouTube channel. You want the audio, don't you? The actual content.
No, on here,
yeah,
it should be automatic at my end as well. But I mean, StreamYard can be a real pain in the backside sometimes.
Yeah.
But at your end, because I know when I do these things, it will show you a link to send to me to actually download it.
Yeah, I will then. I will dig that out. Sure. So when we end the stream, the old invite guests will replaced with something else. We'll send it to. Yeah. I think that's right. Cool. Right. Top man. Right. Largo. We've been spoiled tonight, mate. So let's try and get somebody almost as good next week. Have you got anyone in mind?
Somebody doesn't give you as much of an headache.
No, thoroughly enjoyed it, Simon. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Don't give me a headache. So I'll tell you what, I'll have a ring around and see who's brave enough to come on. Right. And with that, I'll thank our guest Simon Tomlin.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Largo. And we'll sort something out for next week. More on who next week's guest is to follow. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for watching, and good night.
Take care. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.